Yes. Now. Yes. Okay. Hello, everyone. I'm Stephan Classen. I'm a level 3 judge from the Seattle area. I'm a purveyor of great fun. My pronouns are he and him. And today I'm going to be talking to you about how to add spice to your judging. And yes, the spice must flow. I do have a tree growing out of my head. It's a very big tree and it endures. Okay. So today we're going to talk to you about flavor, story, and lore, and then we're going to have something kind of fun. Why flavor? Why story and lore? So this is a question judges often ask, and you might be wondering why this is part of a judge conference in a sense. Well, because this is a topic people don't often talk about a lot, right? As we're mostly focused on rules, policy, how to handle good tournaments, how to deal with problems when they come up, etc. But a lot of times, especially for store judges and judging at stores, things like story and stuff are actually very, very important for the player experience. Story has always been part of the cards, right? Players really engage and interact with things that they recognize, names like Sarah, Singir, Yawgmoth, Urza, etc. And that brings up them both memories and emotional connections with the game. And so for me, as a judge, story has always been one of the biggest driving factors for me to continuing playing Magic. And so I'm trying to kind of showcase a little bit of what lore has, and then we'll get to the more fun part. Oh, and I will not tell my no drinks on the table story because I ruined a lot of cards that day. So lore is what ties sets together, right? It's the game itself. It's the kind of story behind the game you're playing, not just two people using random spell and creature monster cards. We can talk about Yu-Gi-Oh! Or other games if you want to talk about that. And lore and Magic itself has gone through all sorts of variety of things, right? So novels, ebooks, comics, videos, and recently things like art, manga, soundtracks, AR games, etc. So Magic does put a lot of effort into it, even if it's not always the most successful or you don't always see it. Why does story matter, right? So there's a core story for each set, right? I mean, we're currently in Streets of New Capenna. We have the 5 demon families. We just had Kamigawa. And that actually engages players to come back because people want to play those themes. But we also have the overarching Planeswalker plans and plots across all these different worlds, right? Because that actually ties the narrative together of this multiverse. Recurring characters in different settings really makes people really enjoy the game, right? They can constantly follow the pathway of, I'm not going to say Jace, I'm going to say Ajani, throughout the planes, because people love certain characters and love to see how they interact and have to be affected and be resilient in different worlds and settings. Players also connect to different worlds and settings and things, right? So some people really loved Kamigawa. A lot of people really loved Kamigawa. Some people really love specific worlds. Dominaria's coming up, which is a fan favorite because we were there for so many years, right? And so that really ties people and players to the game, which then also ties actions to players in the game, right? Actions in game are a lot easier if they're explained, if it makes sense, and if it's sort of can be explained as a sort of setting as like it's a real world thing. Oh, this is what happens. Your creature dies to a lightning bolt because it got hit by a lightning bolt. Finally, also players remember the stories of their games and characters, right? Especially at the local setting. If players can interact with the story or the characters, right? Like, oh, they had 2 demon lord families fighting heads fighting each other. That is probably more memorable than random robot creature X versus random like snake creature Y kind of thing. I see in the chat too, just looking at too, representation matters, and that's absolutely true too, right? So people identify with the characters and they feel more belonging and involved when they see their characters, their heroes they identify with really succeed. So a little bit about this. So how to judge with flavor first. At stores and communities, knowing the lore can help you engage with players. Like one of the best things I had for my local store when I was a level 1 and level 2 judge was going every week to my F&M and being able to talk about the weekly story that the had shown up on Wizards on the website, right? Talking about what might be happening, what characters were interesting, what we've had theorized about it, and that really helped me engage with players and things. Also, being able to have interactions in the history of friendly and foe characters was also a really good thing for theories and theory crafting in a way, right? I don't know if how many of you had these kind of conversations, but I definitely had lots of theories about the chain veil or how that might actually be limb duel and various other ways that it would engage players at stores to actually be more interactive with judges and store staff because they would be talking about the characters in game, the lore, the AR, those sort of things. Also, finally, Commander is so popular right now, right? Commander connects players to their formats, to the decks they play, right? People identify with their commanders and what cards they use, and that really helps people kind of connect to the world and Magic in that sense too. Commander players, for instance, I've seen will use only basic lands from their own commander's home plane if that's possible. Or commanders will try and use more and more spells or characters they've interacted with in a lot of cases for flavor side of commander versus competitive commander. So it really does make a difference to players, and so it shouldn't be something completely ignored by judges, at least at the store level, because this is how you can find another avenue to interact with players. That can help you judge, you have a better relationship with players, and so they can accept your rulings more likely because they know you then. They're not just a random store employee that they have never talked to. Okay, other examples to compare with this to, and give me one moment. Sorry about that. So new players will often be interested in Magic too, right? So teaching Magic sometimes falls on judges or sometimes store staff. And how do you explain it to them, right? Being able to talk about worlds, what the setting is, really makes a difference for people. So this is one of the first things I want to have brought up in the Discord. I have described some of the past worlds of Magic here in as basic or weird settings as possible. And I'd like you to all guess in the Discord chat one by one which of these worlds I'm describing here in this. So for the first point, Cosmic Horrors in an Old Dark World, where are we? Ooh, some interesting guesses. Eldritch Moon is not a plane, although that is a very good guess. That is a set. You all have pretty much got it though. It's Innistrad, right? And so this is an interesting take on a standard Gothic horror trope, adding cosmic horrors to it in that way during Eldritch Moon. And I did appreciate the idea of the dark being that sort of setting, but that's also not a specific world. That's actually Dominaria. All right, number 2, Cyberpunk with Spirits. Oh man, this one's much easier. Well, it gets harder as it goes down. Good. Kamigawa, everyone got this. We were just there after all. Third one should be pretty obvious from the background of this slide is obviously Ixalan, as I'm seeing already before I even get to this. Good. All right. Fourth one should be relatively simple. I don't even have to ask these questions. You guys are all on it. All right. Now we get to the actually harder ones. Traditional fantasy tropes invaded by slivers. Let's see what people actually put on this one. Oh, and here we have some disagreements. I haven't actually seen a correct answer yet either. These are all planes that have slivers, but this is not the plane I'm describing here. Several people are still typing. Oteria is a continent on Dominaria. Here's some people got it. Chandalar, correct. So Chandalar was a Microprose 1994 PC game world invented by them for that game. It is where the Chain Veil comes from, and various other planeswalkers have interacted with that. And in the core sets, I think it was 2014 and 2015, slivers were actually revealed to be on this world and had sort of invaded the standard knights in armor fantasy tropes in that sense. All right, final one. This one's probably the most challenging. Secrets of trade and mercantilism on a world mashed together by war. Let's see if people guess this one. This one could be a few worlds, but there's one specifically, there's a hint in this that should be specific. People got it. People understand the old sets. Mercadian Masks, yes. So it's the world of Mercadia tied together because of the mashup of planar gates and the first Phyrexian battles and wars that way. So Urza was the one who seeded this in some senses. So good, you guys all got it. So you're not as unfamiliar with the lore as one might think. All right, so the next part I just wanted to describe a bit is just talking about the stories and sort of different ways Magic has used to tell stories, right? So Magic, as I said earlier, has used a variety of different methods to try and tell stories. And it's been successful in some cases and not so successful in others. So I'm going to kind of go through a quick timeline of the different ways Magic has told stories. and kind of gives a little taste of that in a sense so that you people can describe and see and maybe like dig into some of this lore if something sounds interesting to you. So the first version of Magic story that Magic told was through original novels. People remember the like novels Arena or Shattered Alliances. And this went even to like some of the early novels with like even into like Wrath and Storm and the Urza's the Brothers War novel. And while the novels were a fantastic and interesting way to tell us, this didn't tie to the cards all that well until they got to like the retelling of the Brothers War and some of the Weatherlight saga. And unfortunately, I'm not going to cover this too much today because this is a longer discussion and people care more about this than I would think sometimes. But it's awesome. And it's an awesome time period of the story. Not something we're going to cover today necessarily. Then there's the kind of shift in story when they started with Alara and Zendikar blocks, which headed to the Planeswalker novels, if people remember, and then kind of went to the era of Scars of Mirrodin. This era really brought Nicole Bolas forth as the main villain in the sense, and it had the origin stories for a lot of characters we know right now. So Ajani, Nissa, Elspeth, Tezzeret, and many of the original backstory ideas for Jace, Chandra, Soren, and Sarkhan. And these were all mainly in the webcomics. If you want to find them, I can send you links after, and I have an actual guide to help you find all this. And then some of the novels, the Planeswalker novels primarily, and then I don't really want to talk about like the Zendikar or the Scars of Mirrodin novel because unfortunately they were mostly bad. Then Magic moved because they took the ideas from Zendikar and some of these webcomics to the sort of era of web stories. So this was Innistrad, Return to Ravnica, Theros, Khans of Tarkir, and it wasn't always just web fiction. Sometimes it was web articles, right? So Innistrad, if you look at it, actually has no story. The original Innistrad blocks, Innistrad 1. However, it's told through like 5 different story articles and several different like what was it, Savor the Flavor articles and little tidbits of things. You have to really piece the story together. And there were a couple AR games that they actually mailed people like packages to open to find like the discoveries and interesting things about vampires and werewolves and things about a town called it wasn't Thraben, it was the Hanweir Township. This is also where they began testing ebooks, which moderately successful. So, some pluses and minuses there. And then Khans of Tarkir sort of led to the kind of like transition period, which I'll talk about next. Okay, then we entered Origins. Magic Origins was the thing we, at the time in store, theorized about. What the heck does a core set mean when we call it Magic Origins? But it showed that it was the origin stories of many of the Gatewatch characters that we now know. This period covered Battle for Zendikar, Shadows over Innistrad, Kaladesh, Amonkhet, and Ixalan, and it really built up to the end game. All right, this was all web fiction at this time. It was all in-house stories written by authors in the story and lore team by Wizards. And honestly, I feel like this was one of the better periods of fiction for Magic because it was so cohesive and so consistent. You had weekly stories. Every set had a set number of stories. They tied the right characters together. They had a clear end game they were moving towards. There were some shakeups and little things, but nothing too crazy. And so a lot of this really made a big difference for players because this was what I mentioned earlier, where players could come in week to week to FNM and talk about what happened in the lore this time. People were really wondering about what would happen next on Ixalan. People didn't know who would win the battle on Amonkhet when the gate crash went there. People were not sure about who would survive or if anyone would survive through Battle for Zendikar in that sense with the Eldrazi so rampant. So it was a very interesting time period that way to actually read lore, and I highly recommend that too. Then we get to the period of Dominaria, so the actual set Dominaria, the third Ravnica block. I call it a block because it's actually 3 sets, which includes War of the Spark. And I'm not going to throw anyone under the bus on this, but this was unfortunately a pretty big letdown for a lot of players and how they ended this sort of story era. It was supposed to be designed as a set of like slice of life stories continuing through like the different parts of Ravnica and the different guilds, and then have a prequel novel to sort of describe what the buildup was to the War of the Spark, and then release the 2 War of the Spark novels. Unfortunately, the release schedule for all that didn't come out in the right order. There were some interesting writing choices with having specific outside authors choose and write characters, and a lot of things just didn't really come together as we all wanted to in this sense. And so, unfortunately, this was not really the ending of this people really wanted. So if you are looking for story to talk to players about or just read, I highly recommend the Origins to Ixalan period, and I can actually give you links to all that easily, or you can find on the Magic Story website. Okay, so a bit of just hinting at the future. What may the future hold? It looks like we're sticking to right now web fictions and mixes of ebooks occasionally. We're still worried a bit about quality and things, right? The Theros Beyond Death novel got canceled and we got just one article describing the major plot points. Hence why players now in Streets of New Capenna were still confused as to why Elspeth doesn't have the Shadow Spear. We may never find out why she doesn't have the Shadow Spear. And some other things to mention that are coming forth. We don't talk about MUB. MUB is Magic Universe Beyond. For those that don't know, they're absolutely not canon. They're not actual Magic cards, in my opinion. And then there's concerns and questions now of non-canon stories, right? So the comics are releasing pretty regularly and people are saying the quality is good. However, they're absolutely a different canon than the actual cards and novels and other stories. So that's a strange thing we might have to discuss or figure out soon, because what happens in those comics absolutely does not match what happens on the cards. The Netflix series may also be in production limbo for as far as we know from what we've heard. Netflix just shut down their animation studios and canceled multiple projects. So haven't heard news about anything for what that might hold, but as long as we know that it would also be a non-canon story about the main characters in that. So it would also not connect directly to the cards. So that leads to some challenges of how the story will go forward. So far, the stories and sort of web fiction each week has been pretty good, and so we're hoping that continues on the right path for now. Okay, a little bit more on judging before we get to the fun part. How to make it better with your tournament organizer if you're at a local store, right? We're having a lot more interactive things that Wizards is releasing to tie to story and such now, so that's actually really exciting in a sense. Kamigawa, for instance, I'll click to this link in just a minute to show you all this too, has released honestly more things than any other set has ever done previously that tie to lore or enjoyment of the world and that sort of sense. A suggestion here is playing soundtracks in the store. There's actually a Kamigawa soundtrack, and playing music where people engage with things that are not just the cards or reading things actually can get people to enjoy things more. As I mentioned here in the parentheses, you can see there's an anime music video, there's a manga, there's all sorts of little secret things hidden here. So let me just quick and change my screen share here. So this is the blog I run. If you want to see it, I just list and basically catalog every piece of story and lore per world or block. I'm assuming everyone can hopefully still see this. And this is the Kamigawa listing, where it lists literally 23 things that Magic released for lore-based things specifically for Kamigawa's story. So I'll just quickly scroll through just to show why it's so much different, right? Normally we get like 5 pieces of web fiction, a trailer, and maybe a Planeswalker's Guide article. We have an anime music video. We have a full official cinematic trailer. We have full sets of saga stories. Then there's the Planeswalker's Guide and the Legends of Kamigawa articles, a teaser trailer, the actual main storyline, the side stories, this is the old map, but then they actually created a new Kamigawa actual map of the world. Here's the manga adaptation. There's a couple random secret pictures they've put into pre-release decks for extra artists that they hired. Here's the first look video. They did an AR game, so an ARG game where you could scan with your phone and actually walk with your phone around Kamigawa. Unfortunately, they only had it up for 2 weeks and shut it down. So you unfortunately can't do it anymore, but there should be YouTube videos to see it. There's a papercraft throwing star. They did this special art for the sort of what's called lo-fi art to put in the backgrounds of music videos and things. They did a compilation with Hatsune Miku. So they actually had this Vocaloid artist sing a song for Kamigawa. They did a choose your own adventure interactive novel with this organization called Yours Truly, where you can actually walk around Kamigawa and make some choices with an adventure. And yes, that's the anime music video. I have that at the top of this blog too. There's an official soundtrack with 15 songs written specifically for Kamigawa Neon Dynasty. These are some more just world building panels and other descriptions of the world. And then this is my own plot synopsis, and then other anime artists being commissioned to draw art from the world as well. So they put out a huge amount of things for this world when comparatively, almost every other set and every other world has released maybe 4 or 5 stories and a couple articles, and that's it. So Neon Dynasty really pushed the envelope of what you can do and how players can interact with the game in the set. This was not all on the mothership either. A lot of this was released on Twitter or through other countries' websites. So like a lot of the anime art and the like the Hatsune Miku things weren't even listed on the main Magic website. You actually have to find them or something that way too. And I'm seeing in the chat too, there are some things to this level for Streets of New Capenna, just not quite as much. There's, like, Kamigawa was a really big celebration in a sense of this return of how much they did. But we are getting a soundtrack for Streets of New Capenna, so play that soundtrack when you're judging, or ask the store, sorry, to play that soundtrack while you're judging, because it can add to players' experiences that way. Shadows over Innistrad is another point I wanted to bring up quickly, where questions where people would discuss what was causing the madness on Innistrad. And so it was a constant weekly discussion of, is it Merilage? Is it, the Eldrazi? Was it just something else? And so these kind of things actually add to it too. And then just a current example too, where will Praetors show up next? What world will we see another Praetor card on? And revealed now, we've seen it on New Capenna with Urabrask. But then, asking players to what family did they join for pre-release? Or if you're doing pre-releases, seating all players at the same family together so that they can, talk and strategize together for their own enjoyment of that actual family. So other ways to help your own work as a judge with a tournament organizer. Okay. Now the fun part. This is the part where you get to do what you probably never get to do on the floor of a tournament. I will be giving you scenarios, and we will be playing Flavor Judge. We will be using this to actually make sense of what some of these cards might actually do, or these scenarios, and try and see by voting in the Discord chat what actually happens in these actual scenarios. These are truly lore questions. They're not rules questions, so it's all up to interpretation. And we'll be having a post in the Discord where you can put a reaction to vote. And then afterwards, either I will describe sort of what we think might happen, or if someone wants to raise their hand in, raise their hand in Discord and volunteer, we can have someone volunteer to describe of what silliness might just have occurred. Everyone ready? Any questions? Okay. Here we go. First, the bird too small to fly. We have a whippoorwill versus a hurricane. You may control a whippoorwill. For those of you that have played old school Magic, this is one of the very first choices of birds in the dark, which in card rules does not have flying. And then your opponent is casting a hurricane, which does a lot of damage to flying creatures. Does the hurricane destroy the whippoorwill, or does the whippoorwill survive? If the whippoorwill survives, please click on the bird emoji. If the hurricane blasts the whippoorwill, because of course it's a bird, why wouldn't it be blasted by a hurricane? Please click on the wind emoji. Oh man, people really love this bird. Give it a couple seconds. I don't have Jeopardy music. I hope our presentation this evening has Jeopardy music. And yes, thank you, Nikki. Also, if you've noticed, Nikki is putting in my prompt in here for you all to connect with. I'll wait for a couple more people who are still typing. Looks like I don't think the hurricane is catching up on this case. So would anyone in the chat of Discord like to volunteer to say why the whippoorwill survives in this case? Whippoorwill hides under a bush. Fantastic. We need creature type bush, and it says tap hide target whippoorwill. The squirrel wouldn't be a blow, and ground birds shouldn't be either. But whippoorwills aren't ground birds. They're songbirds. Several birds build burrows. Okay, so underground. You don't want the bird. I think that's the best one. Luke, you take it because we don't want the bird to die. Okay, scenario 2. Yar, we're walking the plank. Which of these creatures is the walk the plank most likely to destroy? Creature number 1, Eryximanthes, the slumbering island, and a literal kraken so big there's a city living on it. Water elemental, which is a literal elemental made out of water. Or Kamiz, or Obscura, or Oculus, a cephalid rogue from a city that may not actually have an ocean on it. Oh man, people do not like cephalids. What? Nobody wanted the island? There's a couple of people that thought that the literal island should die by walking off a plank. A cephalid does equal squid person, yes. They were in the Odyssey block on Dominaria back in the day on a different continent of Oteria, and they were the squid people that took over when the merfolk were in decline because of the Phyrexian invasion. Well, it looks like it's bad news for Kamiz this time, and the family did not protect him from the pirates, and they walked the plank. I appreciate, Mark, your post there of they all die. Walking the plank kills everything. Absolutely. All right. Would someone like to describe how poor Kamiz finds his end at the end of a plank? Oh, I see several good comments in this already. I'll let you enjoy in this, I think. Freshwater cephalid into the ocean. Fantastic. That would be a very slow death, but a very much walking the plank. Okay. Scenario 3. Check my time. To the moon. We have Nicole Bolas, enchanted by, imprisoned in the moon. A player is now casting their second Nicole Bolas Planeswalker. Does Nicole Bolas survive and dominate the world, or does the moon also just sort of take over Nicole Bolas because it's imprisoned in the moon? Please click on the skull if Nicole Bolas dies and you can only have one moon planeswalker. Or please click on the magic icon if Nicole Bolas is still the king of planeswalkers and does not care about being stuck in a moon somewhere and comes happily forth. Okay, looks like I need to go a little bit faster if we're going to get through all 13 scenarios. And yes, I specifically chose 13 scenarios. The first was a decoy Bolas. Okay, it looks like it's a close one this time, but Bolas has it. Bolas does survive being imprisoned by the moon, and the moon has to just cry a little bit and be sad that it doesn't actually get Bolas. Quick thing for the chat too, as I go to the next scenario, rules question. What actually happens in the scenario? Do you get to keep your moon and your Nicole Bolas, or do you have to sacrifice one for your actual judging rules question of this presentation? Thank you, Alex, for the explanation. They sure are legendary permanents with the same name, even though one of them is a moon or in the moon. So you do not get to keep both Bolases in this case. They do still keep their name. Okay. Situation number 4. Pants or no pants? Who wore it better? Karn, Scion of Urza, or Karn, the Great Creator? Which do you choose? So again, please click on the jeans icon with Nikki's post, or click on the leg icon if you prefer the Great Creator. Just need to wave it around freely, and his legs and no pants. Yes, I understand it's not actually pants, but there's no like sash icon emoji in Discord. Okay, it looks like pantsless wins in this case. People do not like sash / robe type things on their robots. So the great creator wins on this one. Does someone want to describe why? Well, the people are describing why they prefer pantsless. So we'll just move on. All right. This one's a multiple choice question in a sense. 3 sides of the same coin. So as a flavor judge, how do you justify multiple of the same planeswalker on the battlefield? And what about an opponent playing another one of the same planeswalker? Are they from alternate universes? Nikki, too fast. Delete that. That one's not ready yet. Is each one a representation of flavors, or they'll help offer players? So this is my personal, honestly, where each one is a representation of a favor or some contract they're offering you. So these are the abilities they'll currently give you. And so that's why you have loyalty counters. And when they leave the battlefield, they planeswalk away because their contract is fulfilled. Personal favorite. Or is reality and time ripping apart to allow this madness? Or are there just clones or shapeshifter walkers walking all over and just pretending to be Jace multiple times in the battlefield? This one's, yeah, fully multiple choice, so enjoy your multiple choiceness. Multiple timeline concerns, people appreciate that. Jace can do what he wants. That's an excellent choice as well. Jace clones, yes, that works for Jace clones, but what about a Johnny? A Johnny can't make clones. I chose Jace because I could find the most versions that people probably hadn't read before. Jace clones a Johnny. Okay. I see we like the clone theory the most, it seems, mostly. That and time travel. All right. Well, you all can pick your own choices that way. All right. Next one. This is eyeballs everywhere. So you have a number of eyeballs out and you're collecting eyeballs as a player. And you've got, your opponent really likes creatures with weird numbers of eyes. They've got both Mad Rush Cyclops and a Firebelly Changeling. And you have an Eye Gouge, just happen to have that in your hand, you cast it. How many eyeball counters do you get for Eye Gouging Mad Rush Cyclops or Firebelly Changeling? Do you get 1 eyeball? Do you get 2 eyeballs? Do you get 4 eyeballs? Do you get X eyeballs? Or the ever-present, very popular mono symbol, do you get Y eyeballs? And remember, we're not asking for the rules questions here. This is all flavor judge. So pick your favorite answer here in your chat of which one you think gives you the correct number of eyeballs into your jar of eyeballs when you eye gouge the Mad Rush Cyclops. And forgive me, I said my opponent has it. You are eye gouging your own creature because you can't steal eyeballs off your opponent's creatures. Oh, entertaining. People really like why eyeballs. So I guess we'll just ask why eyeballs for this whole evening then. And that was the other question I was going to ask as the follow-up. Good, people ask this. If you eye gouge something, then you're trying to collect eyeballs from it. How are you actually getting these eyeballs? You've destroyed it. I think Mark has the good point there. So maybe it is why eyeballs, because you're not really getting eyeballs. Ah, good. Someone caught the pun. Why balls? Okay, it looks like why eyeballs wins this one. So we have an unknown, questionable number of eyeballs being eye gouged out of weird monsters and cyclopses and things with too many eyes. Okay, onward we move. Kibler Google, we need an answer to this question. Rock or horse? Shakey answers only. You have a Kelith Sunmane Familiar out, which is a legendary creature horse, and your opponent is casting a Roiling Earthquake, which deals X damage to each creature without horsemanship and each player. Does the Earthquake win, or does the horse win? Can this horsemanship its way through this Earthquake? Looks like the rock is winning. Poor horse. Horses can't ride horses. That's not true. A smaller horse could definitely ride a bigger horse. Wait, a horse doesn't have horsemanship, people are saying in chat? Wouldn't a horse guaranteed have horsemanship because it is literally a horse? Does Khaled have a partner? I didn't actually think about that one. Okay, it looks like the earthquake wins in this case, which is unfortunate for Brian Kibler because he literally asked this question on Twitter a few weeks back. I'll pause for laughter at this point, but we'll see if this was enjoyable. Anyway, next scenario. Praetor's Loyalty. You're casting Priest of Gix and you get your triple black, and then you use that triple black to cast Children. Is the Priest of Gix abandoning its original Praetor for its new Phyrexian Loyalty? Please click on the Mask of Yawgmoth if you're staying with Gix, or if this priest is now turning to the new Phyrexian All Will Be One icon. Oh, good. I see some people are on the Sheoldred train. Oh, I see a lot of people are on the Sheoldred train. Poor Gix. When Gix eventually gets a card, it will not be as popular as Sheoldred by this crowd. Fun lore tidbit. I actually did the background research. Gix is actually not a Praetor in the end. Gix was a member of the Inner Circle, not an actual Praetor. So Praetors are still entirely unnamed, and we don't have a single named old Praetor. Looks like completion wins in this case.
Wait, even with Sabo?
Yep, Sabo was a general, not a Praetor.
Interesting. Okay, fair.
Yeah, I looked it up. There's several characters I had only heard of like once or twice, like 10 or 15 years ago. And yeah, they were either Evankars, generals, or Inner Circle members, and not actually Praetors. Every Praetor in the old days was still unnamed. Okay, next scenario. Fighting fire with more fire. So you have a fire elemental, and yes, I'm still going old school with these images and these card frames. And your opponent decides to fire blast it, sacrificing 2 mountains and targeting your fire elemental. Does the fire elemental survive and continue to swing? Please click the tap symbol. Does the fire blast kill it with fire because you fight fire with fire after all? Please click the fire symbol once Nikki gets it into the chat. Yep. There it is. Good. Oh, this one's even. Which one will take it? Does fire win, or does fire attack and then still win? A lot of interesting, good decisions of what people are saying, how this actually is described. The blast blows out the fire elemental. You can just blow up a fire still. Controlled burns. Okay. I'm surprised no one went with the obvious answer on this case. The 2 mountains are obviously extinguishing the fire elemental. They're obviously being thrown in the fire elemental by sacrificing 2 giant pieces of land and smashing the fire elemental. But anyway, it looks like fire does win in this case, and the fire elemental has to just suffer and then live through the consequences. All right, we're baking what into a pie? You have a wall of stone and your opponent bakes it into a pie. Is this actually a good food token to eat, or are you just eating rock? And just a side note, as you make your choices of what you're choosing to eat in this case, either pie or rock, the initial suggestion for the scenario was a wall of rotting flesh, and I didn't think that was really appropriate for conference in this case. Looks like Flavor Judge has very peculiar tastes in this case. Oh, thank you. Someone referencing Neverending Story of being a rock biter. Yes. No, I did look at Wall of Tears as an option for this too, but I didn't think tears would be a very complicated choice for people baking into a pie. It looks like the rock wins it. People do not want to eat this pie. If you bake a wall of stone into a pie, you're just eating rock. Unless you're a rock biter, right? Thank you, Josh Stansfield. I appreciate that. It's good to hear from you. All right, coming to the end slowly but surely, we have a mob in the family. So this is a perfect example of what you could describe for players in an FNM. Ob Nicholas is on New Capenna, on the streets, slowly taking down the crime families. And you're casting him at this point and using your casualty X. Which of these two characters are you going to sacrifice? Ziatora the Incinerator or Lord Xander the Collector? And so 1 or 2 on the chat, please. And the question is, why in the end is this the better choice? As you make your choices too, in the story as well, Ob Nicholas is slowly taking apart the different gangs from within, causing disloyalty among people, and then slowly choosing different ways to try and topple each family and then take over the plane. Okay, well, people really don't like Lord Xander surviving through this. He is obviously the better choice, even though they're both 6/6s. Well, in story does match, correct? So someone posted the murder, very good. Lord Xander is the first of the family lords or family's leaders to die. Ob Nicholas does sneak in and actually kill him. And if you just think about it too, Lord Xander is the only one of these two that has a dies trigger. And so it's absolutely worth more to sacrifice in pure value strategy. But then also that ties so much better. So if you had this sort of scenario with players, you could talk to them about that story now and say, yeah, well, Lord Xander does die, and take a look at murder. And this is just ties really well into the flavor of your game. Okay. Wait, this again. I didn't, what? Oh, okay, I guess this just works fine. So you have Nicole Bolas Planeswalker in a prison well, and you're casting a Nicole Bolas. This time, if you have a skull and crossbones, does Nicole Bolas die, or does the magic symbol keep Nicole Bolas alive? Hopefully people also catch the slight reference in this one. Oh, where is my chat thing? Copy it in myself. One moment. There it goes. Nikki got it in. Oh, it's still close again. People still want Bolas to die in this case. Oh, I actually really enjoy Nicole Bolas. I just thought he would be a perfect target for being in the moon because he never actually got to experience the moon. And then there's another card with him actually being imprisoned. So Nicole Bolas is actually one of my more favorite characters when they write him right. Very close. Nicole Bolas survives yet again from another prison sentence. So he did not get trapped in the moon, did not get trapped in this prison realm. So we will see Nicole Bolas rise again someday, I'm sure, also in the story. Interestingly, Mark Sheen, that is a long discussion I can have with you after this conversation of where the sphere is between his horns. There is some theory of changing the plot line. So we can talk about that some other time. As we did before, because this is almost the same scenario, does Nicole Bolas have to sacrifice himself this time due to the legend rule, if you think about actual magic rules? This should be relatively simple for all you judges out there, but I figured because we did it for the last one, and this is the same scenario almost again, and it still works just fine, we are still going to have Nicole Bolas survive this escapade, one way or another. Okay. And finally, everyone's personal favorite. I had to put this one in. Emrakul versus 15 squirrels. Who is going to win? The flying spaghetti monster, the 15-15, or 15 1/1s, somehow managing, ignoring magic rules of how to combat against this Emrakul, the Aeon's Torn. Oh man, squirrels always win with this crowd. These flying spaghetti monsters don't seem to stand a chance. Oh, there's a couple Emrakul fans here. Okay. She will not be fully defeated by 15 little chittering horrors. You can argue the green is a color, but Emrakul has protection from colored spells, and technically the tokens aren't spells. Oh man, there's some interesting responses here of how the squirrels would defeat Emrakul if you check the chat. Very entertaining. Throw enough squirrels at the problem and it won't be a problem anymore. Very good. Okay, and from our voting, it looks very clear that Emrakul is not making it out against the chittering mass of horrors. So the squirrels do win in this case. We do need more squirrel grenades to take down an Eldrazi. All right, and with that, that is the end of my game. I hope you all enjoyed. This was 13 scenarios of Flavor Judge, and hopefully you found some enjoyment in the different parts of story that we put together for you tonight. As always, if you want information about the compilation blog I put together, I'm happy to share that in the chat at the end. And then I'm also always usually happy to chat lore and story online as well. I am a mod for the Vorthos subreddit, so often they're chatting about things anyway. So